Hey. Time for another Out of This World story from rSpace. Today on rSpace, sometimes life just hands you a random human who refuses to mind their own business. And that, dear friends, is far more terrifying and far more satisfying than any Hollywood plot. Cheating wife used her client's house for her affair. I divorced her and made sure karma came for her. I, 31 male, never imagined I'd be on the other side of one of these posts, but here we go. My wife, Tracy, 31 female, is a real estate agent. Or she is for now, at least. She probably won't be for much longer, if I have my way. She's been in the business for almost 5 years, and she was really good at it. She was charming and always knew what to say. That was a big part of what drew me into her in the first place. I always joked that she could sell a shell to a turtle. After 6 years of marriage, I thought I knew everything there was to know about her, so I trusted her completely. And that's why it was so weird when I got a message from an unfamiliar person telling me that he had important information about my wife. I wanted to block him right away. It sounded like the perfect opening for a scam of some sort, but the account seemed legit. It had posts going back about 10 years, and his picture was all over it. I wasn't ringing any scam alarms in my head, so I decided to hear him out. I decided that I would just bail if the conversation took a weird turn. He got right to the chase. He told me that he lived across the street from a house that my wife was trying to sell, and she'd been bringing the same man to the house multiple times a week. At first, it didn't seem like a big deal. He just assumed the guy was a hard sell. But eventually, it was obvious that there was no interest in selling. He thought he could be a contractor of some sort, but he never came with any tools. And besides, he always came in her car. He knew my wife was married, and he'd looked up her social media to find out if the guy was her husband. When he saw I wasn't the guy she'd been bringing around, he felt like he had to let me know what was going on. I stared at this message for minutes without replying. I was going back and forth over everything in my head. I really wanted to convince myself that he was trying to scam me somehow, but I couldn't bring myself to believe it. He wasn't fishing for money. He didn't even seem excited to tell me. I wanted it all to be some huge misunderstanding, but I couldn't imagine how it could be one. When I got back in touch with him, I asked if he had any proof, videos or photos of the two of them together. He told me he didn't, but he said he could get me a photo next time. I thought about that for a moment, and then asked him if he'd be able to call me instead. I wanted to catch them myself. He hesitated for a moment and asked if I wasn't going to do anything crazy. I promised him I wasn't. I understood his concern, honestly. Some men didn't take well to being cheated on, and he wouldn't want to be responsible for an incident. It took a lot of talking to convince him, but he eventually agreed. He seemed a bit reluctant, and I wasn't sure that he'd actually follow through. He didn't want to get involved in any drama, and I didn't blame him. I didn't say anything to her about it. I only had the word of a complete stranger. It was hardly a solid defense on my end, so I pretended everything was still okay in our relationship. I still chatted and joked with her. The only thing I didn't do with her was have sex, for obvious reasons. She tried to initiate once, but I brushed it off and told her that I wasn't up to it because I'd had a stressful day. She didn't seem to notice anything was wrong. She kept going on about her day like we were both completely fine. Maybe I shouldn't complain since I was doing the same thing. But now that I was suspecting that she was hiding something, I started noticing small differences in her behavior. It was enough to make me think that my new friend was telling the truth. I noticed that she was putting on a lot more effort into her appearance than she used to. It wasn't dramatic or anything, but she was dressing up a lot sexier than she usually did for work. It was so subtle that I wouldn't have noticed if someone hadn't planted the suspicion in my head. I also noticed that she would hide her phone from me when she got a text. Again, it was pretty subtle. She'd just angle her screen away from me slightly. It was so subtle that it looked like a coincidence, but it happened too often for it not to be on purpose. The more I paid attention, the more the little things started to add up until I was convinced that she was cheating on me. Almost a week went by before I heard from the guy again. He was talking quietly, like he was worried about being overheard. All he said was, "They're here again. Same house, same guy." Then he gave me directions and made me promise again not to do anything stupid. I assured him that I wasn't going to ruin my life over a cheater. I just wanted to confirm it with my own eyes. I drove down to the address he gave me and parked way up the road. I made sure I had a good view of the house. Her car was parked right in front of it. I could also see the for sale sign in the yard. That was probably how he'd gotten her info and eventually gotten in touch with me. I didn't go into the house, though I really wanted to. They wouldn't let me in, and I would just end up screaming through the locked door. Besides, I didn't want the cops called on me. The plan was to ambush them while they were heading back to the car. I wanted to get a video of the two of them together and make sure she knew I'd seen them. I waited in the car for over an hour before I saw movement at the front door. I practically jumped out of the car and started recording on my phone. I saw them long before they noticed me. There was no question of what they'd been up to in the house. Her clothes weren't as neat as they were in the morning, and her hair wasn't quite straight. I'd already recorded the two of them coming out of the front door with their arms around each other. They didn't notice me until I started coming up the front walk. He noticed me first, but didn't really react. He just slowed down a little. When my wife saw me, she jumped and swore loudly. She ducked behind his back like she thought it was possible to hide from me. He jumped in front of her like he wanted to protect her. I realized that he didn't know who I was, and he probably thought she was scared of me. I stopped a few feet short of the two of them and told the guy that I was her husband. His body language changed immediately. A moment ago, he was squaring up for a fight. Now he was backing away from her, looking shocked. He apologized and said he had no idea. I didn't say anything. I didn't fully believe him. Maybe she really hadn't told him, but I'm pretty sure he should have figured it out, since they were sneaking around to her client's house. It didn't really matter whether he knew or not. I didn't feel like dealing with him in the moment. I was focused on my wife, who was now standing alone and looking like she wanted to be absolutely anywhere else. Tracy started crying. I know her well enough to know that she wasn't actually upset. That was how she cried when she was trying to drum up sympathy. She didn't actually feel guilty, she just knew that she was in trouble, and she was trying to avoid the consequences. I fought to stay calm and keep my voice level, so I pointed out that she'd been using a client's house for her affair, and asked if she realized how badly she'd screwed up. I pointed the camera from her face to the for sale sign to emphasize my point. She opened her mouth to say something, but nothing seemed to come to mind. I told her to go home and pack a bag. I said she had 2 hours to leave before I got back. She'd have to look for somewhere else to stay that night. That shocked her to the reality, and she finally started talking. She said it wasn't what I thought it was, and that he was just a client. I expected her to lie, but I hadn't expected such a lame excuse. How stupid did she think I was? Both of their reactions had given them away completely. I didn't bother responding to that. I just kept the phone pointed at her, and she kept trying to dig herself out. It was one excuse after another from there. She kept trying to convince me that he was a client who'd been having doubts about the listing. When I didn't react to that, she claimed that he was going through a divorce and just needed someone to listen. I asked if listening was the reason her shirt and her hair were messy. I didn't give her a chance to find a response. I just told her she was done. I told her not to come back to the house. I advised her to call her broker and tell them what was going on, or I would, and that she would pray they wouldn't decide to sue her for what she'd done in a client's home. I didn't need to tell her that she'd just torpedoed her own career. She grabbed my shirt and begged me to talk things through with her first. She finally admitted that she messed up, but she believed we didn't have to throw everything away over her mistake. I shrugged her away and walked back to my car. Her affair partner had disappeared. He decided that it wasn't a good idea to hang around. I didn't blame him. Tracy followed me all the way to the car, begging me to stay and listen to her. I ignored her and got straight into the car. She was knocking on the window, yelling at me to open up. She sounded angry now. I put my phone in its holder on the dashboard, still recording. I tried to angle it to catch her face through the window, but it ended up mostly just looking up my nose. Her voice was clearer in the video, though, and it was easy to hear her pounding on the window. I drove away, and I wasn't surprised to see that she followed me. I was starting to worry that she was going to do something stupid, because she was driving recklessly. It was a miracle that she got home without causing an incident. When we got down, she was visibly upset. She wasn't crying anymore, but her eyes were red and puffy. She was scowling now and started shouting at me as soon as she got out of the car. I held up the phone again and told her to stay back. From her angry expression and the way she was charging me down, I was genuinely afraid that she was going to hit me or get physical in some way. Fortunately, she calmed down a bit when she was reminded that she was being recorded. I took advantage of her hesitation to cut off her angry speech. I told her to pack her things and leave the house. I was going to drive away and I'd be back in 2 hours. I expected her to see her gone. She tried another angle this time, whining about how I was going to ruin her life and that I didn't need to drag her work into this. I reminded her that she'd done that herself when she turned her client's home into a motel. That shut her up for a few seconds. She didn't try to stop me when I drove away. She just asked me to take some time and give her a chance to talk to me before I reported her. I went for a short drive to clear my head. When I got back home, she was gone. I was tempted to report her right away, but I decided to think about it first. I'm still trying to decide the right move. I'm hurt and angry right now, and I wanted to do whatever I could to make her pay. The subtle cues, fancier outfits, angled phones, hair slightly less straight, were basically Morse code for I'm cheating, please notice me. And then using a client's home as her personal hookup spot? What? That's another level of stupid. Update 1. Tracy has been served with divorce papers. I talked to a lawyer immediately after I made my first post, and he advised me not to go to her employer with that video. That was the same advice I received here, too. Once I calmed down and managed to get my emotions out of the mix, a hard task if I'm being completely honest, I realized it was a good advice. Making her lose her job would just soothe my ego for a little while, but there was a good chance that I'd be stuck paying with alimony. There was the fact that the court might not like the idea of me violating her privacy like that, but that doesn't mean I'm never going to use the video. I've made several backups of it. I've got a copy on the cloud and 2 copies on thumb drives, one with my mother and another one with my lawyer. That might seem like overkill, but I've heard stories. Tracy knows her career is in danger, and I can't put anything past her right now. Speaking of Tracy, she didn't take the divorce well. She started calling me a few hours after she was served. I didn't pick up. I'd been advised not to, and I wasn't going to go against my lawyer's advice like an idiot. I could tell she was mad though, because she called me a lot. When she realized I wasn't going to pick up, she started texting me instead. I read those, though I still didn't reply to her. There was a lot of name calling and dodging accountability. The fun part was when she tried to pin the failure of our marriage on me. According to her, our divorce was my fault because she didn't want one. She'd made a mistake out of boredom, and now she was trying to fix it. I was the one who was taking the easy way out, like a coward. I laughed when I read that. I wanted to know if she honestly believed that, but I knew better than to ask her. I haven't talked to her one-on-one since then. We've seen each other a few times in court, but I never talked to her without my lawyer present, and never about anything besides the divorce. I'm trying to play it safe. I'm planning on coming out of this divorce as clean as possible, and I'm not going to do anything to put that at risk. Update 2. The divorce is finalized. The papers have been signed and the assets divided. I'm finally a free man. Putting my marriage behind me wasn't easy. I won't try to sound tough or anything. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do, but I knew there was nothing for me in that relationship anymore. Tracy had gone to great lengths to hurt me once, and she'd do it again if I gave her the chance. When it was all official, my lawyer told me I could do whatever I wanted with the video. There was no way it could hurt me legally anymore. I thought about it for a few days. I was still bitter, but some distance from Tracy and some time to focus on myself has dulled the anger. But I still felt like there was a need for accountability. I felt like I owed it to the homeowners to make sure the truth was told. After all, I only found out about Tracy's affair because a stranger had decided to do the right thing. So it was my turn. So I sent the video along with a written statement to her brokerage. I made sure to keep it polite and professional. No personal attacks. I didn't want them throwing it out as being part of some miserable ex-husband's revenge scheme. They didn't take long to respond. 2 days later, I got a call from a representative thanking me for coming forward. Apparently, she hadn't just violated company policy. She violated her licensing agreement and state law. They had already contacted the affected homeowner, who had raised hell and talked about getting an attorney. They launched an investigation to find out exactly how many times she'd done that, and if she'd done the same thing at other houses. I knew that Tracy would access a lockbox with the key at any time she wanted to show a house. From the little I understand about it, the system logs the date and time and identity of every agent who accesses the key to show the house. It wouldn't be hard for them to prove that she'd accessed the key at the time of the video. I wondered what else the logs would reveal. Until then, she was terminated, pending the results of the investigation. She was also facing civil charges related to breach of contract and misuse of property. They didn't get back to me after that, and I started to wonder if they'd swept the whole thing under the rug. I found out that wasn't the case when Tracy called one afternoon. I answered her call out of curiosity. I had a strong feeling that I knew what she was going to say, but I wanted to hear it myself. Sure enough, she'd lost her job, and she was in steep legal trouble. And she was furious. Never mind the fact that she was the one who committed the offense. She blamed me for everything. She insisted that I was the one who had ruined her life. She's living with her sister now, unemployed and waiting for the board to decide what to do with her license. We both knew that her license was probably going to get revoked. She was already trying to figure out what she was going to do next. I reminded her that she wasn't the only one who had to start over now. The only difference is that everything we both were going through was completely her fault. I asked her if she was looking for sympathy from me and if she really expected to get it. She was silent. I ended the call when she was still speechless. I went no contact with her after that. I was pretty satisfied with how things had turned out, and I honestly didn't need to keep up with her life. She'd torn down her life through a series of mistakes that were all purely her fault, and she refused to acknowledge even a bit of responsibility the whole time. She just kept trying to blame me for everything that happened to her. I chose not to have that kind of negativity in my life anymore. If you'd asked me before my divorce whether I believed in karma, I would have given you a solid no. I've seen too much injustice in the world to believe that bad people get what's coming to them. But sometimes life hands you the chance to tip the scales a bit, and you'd be a fool not to take the opportunity. The guy across the street, he didn't owe anyone a thing. He could have scrolled past, sipped his coffee, and gone through his life blissfully ignorant. But no, he saw a mess, a little chaos in the making, and thought, you know what? Somebody needs to know about this. If a complete stranger had the power to change your life forever, would you be grateful or terrified? Share your thoughts with us below. And thank you for joining us today on rSpace. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. Until next time.